Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm excited to be sitting down with Kim Gentry Meyer to discuss her book, which Kim, honestly, I love it. I know you and I spoke at NRB, but Herald Reflections, when you sent this to me in the mail, I was like, hmm. And then I opened it up and I was like, what a beautiful book. And to see your paintings in the background, thank you so much for sending this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
No, I really did. It's a quick read. I didn't follow the full instructions because I know you said don't read it all at once, but
I'm glad
I
I'm glad you found it to be a quick read. That was the intention, 100%.
No, and then the paintings, and there was so many things like because I love to take notes. I don't know where I was. I think it was at my son's gymnastics, and I'm like, I'm like that guy in the back reading and writing, and I'm like, but I'm taking all these notes. But then I just first of all, like your initial question, which you said, "Who am I to you?" Which is a question I think a lot of us ask, and I ask people all the time, "Who am I?" But I've never asked that question,
Mm.
"Who am I to you?" And
Mm.
then you got the answer. But tell me about that. I don't want to give away too much, but tell me about that initial question and how this came together.
Yeah, and I felt like it was important to kind of put it in the intro of the book to explain it because it's really how this whole what I call my Herald journey began. It was back in, oh gosh, it's been a couple years ago now, but I really was just feeling at kind of a crossroads, and I just don't know what to do with my ministry. How do I really serve you in a way that's uniquely me, Lord? And just needing some, I think, some direction, some specific direction. And so I just said, Lord, just in my quiet time, who am I to you? What do you have for me? Because I do believe that he has specific assignments, for each of us based on our giftings and our calling and, who we are. And I think he cares about those little details, so that's kind of why I asked that question. And I don't know what I was expecting, Craig. I don't really think I had an expectation of what I thought I would hear back, but I was really shocked to hear so quickly, kind of just, in my spirit, I just really felt him saying to me, "You're my herald." And I was like, "What?" That was not something I was thinking about. So I even asked again, "Did you say that again?" And he said, "You're my herald." And I said, "Okay." Okay. And so, yeah, I just really sat with it for a while, a couple months really. And well, of course, Lord, yes, I take that assignment on. And I think we're all called to be that though, right? I mean, I think we're all called to be, to speak his truth, to proclaim the goodness and the coming of the Lord. And so I said, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. What should I do?" And so I know you and I had spoken a while back, and that was at the time I had released the Herald album, which was 8 original songs. And I've done music all my life, but I kind of had given up or put down doing music anymore. And he said, "I want you to make an album." And I said, "No, I don't really think that. I think it's that time's over. I think it's just not going to happen for me, or, just forget it." And he said, "No, do an album." So I said, all right. I kind of, all right. So I did it. Um, and then I said, "Okay, I'm doing this album, Lord, what else?" And he said, "Paint." And I said, "No, I think, I'm done with painting. I've laid the paintbrushes down. I think I'm good enough, too old." What, all the excuses we make,
Mhm.
right? Because we all kind of compare ourselves to some, you know, perfect kind of whatever, and it's just not helpful. And so he said, "Paint." And so I think because I was so resistant, he was like, "Fine, I'll give you images." He literally, Craig, dropped these images of sunsets into my head.
Wow.
Now, this is just my way of interpreting them as best that I could with my abilities. But he really gave me these ideas. So I just started doing a sunset, one for each of the songs on the Herald album. And so that's kind of how that all came together. And then, the book was just kind of honestly, it kind of just was birthed out of that process because when the album came out, I found myself telling the stories behind the songs as we do as songwriters. Well, this is what I was going through, this is why I wrote this, these are the Bible verses that anchor the songs. And I thought, I wish I had a place to put all that into one place because I'd talk about the songs, but then somebody would have to go listen to the songs, and then they'd say, "Well, where's the art?" And then I didn't have a great way of showing them the art. We'll go to my website. Well, not everybody's going to do that. So I thought, well, how do I kind of just get it all in one place? And I thought, well, a book made the most sense, right? Because you can just kind of hold it. And I thought a devotional made the most sense because each song could just be like a chapter, a topic, a devotional topic. And I am just a person who likes to cut to the chase. Like, I just like, if you can say it in 50 words, say it in 50 words, not 500. Do you know? And
Love it.
so
No,
when
I know, I know, I know.
that's just me. Like, I don't like reading long, drawn out things. I'm like, oh, I mean, I literally all the time. my family laughs at me because I'm like, oh, just get to the point. What are you trying to say here? And so I thought I just want this to get to the point. So that's why they're brief. The reflections, which are the devotional, pieces, are brief, but they get to the point. I also put out all the scripture. I wrote out all the scripture because I don't like it where you have to stop and go look something up and come back. I'm like,
Oh, I
I'll lose
agree. I
people.
agree.
I'll lose people. Like people don't have time to do that. And so, but so it's it's all there, and I hope it's just like in a really digestible format.
I mean that's a great answer. I mean, you said a couple things. One is just to clarify, because there are people that watch the show and and sometimes they feel I don't want to say uncomfortable, but when we say like God spoke to me, and just to
Mm,
clarify,
yes.
it's not always auditory, right? It's
Right.
just within your spirit. When God speaks to me, it's and this is something I think God speaks to all of us, and it's just a matter of discerning God's
Hmm.
voice and being, like you said, alone. But what's interesting too is when we ask God for, like you said, that question, or if I ask God, what's your plan for my life? It's interesting because when he answers that question, sometimes we don't even take action, right? We don't obey. We're
Mm,
either questioning, like, are you sure? Or maybe it's
mm,
not really. And like you said with the paintbrushes, I put my paintbrushes down, but like when God commands us to do something, right? Because how many times I say, God, I surrender my life over to you, but then I'm like, well, but if it's not what I want, then
hmm.
I'm always negotiating until the
Yeah.
day recently I said, I'll do whatever you want. And it's like that
Mm,
question, who am I to you? Like, so if we want to follow God's plan for our life, we have to be ready, like you, to do something that makes us uncomfortable, that might not be part of our plan or agenda, like you did with the paintbrushes. And it's interesting for you to say that cut to the chase, because that's very interesting, especially in a book like this.
mm,
And like you said, if I, like you could the QR codes and I can scan, which I've never. I mean, I've done several books. I've never even thought about putting them into the book. And the paintings, I mean, I was literally touching them to see if it was
mm,
oil. I'm like,
mhm,
is there any residue? It's so beautiful. And the passages in the book, like Romans 8:16, right? I'm sorry, 8:6, the mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the spirit is life and peace.
mhm.
Great passages. But then in the book too, I mean, we've spoken a few times, but I didn't realize, especially it's Mental Health Awareness Month, that you
Yeah.
struggled from
Oh
depression.
yeah.
Assuming
Oh
that's
yeah.
why you released the book this month. So tell me about that, and how did you, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not something that we just overcome. It's something we struggle with daily. For me, it's regularly. So
Mm,
what
yeah.
do you lean on, and tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, thank you for kind of centering that topic. Yeah, I really, Craig, have dealt with it almost my whole life, honestly. And I don't, I don't think when we're younger we even understand quite what it is or what's going on. But yeah, as I've matured, I've really just come to understand, that scripture is just life-giving to me. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the spirit is life and peace. And so I just find I have to take my thoughts to Christ. I have to take my mind to Christ to be renewed in Him. I have to, tell Him what's going on, the problems I'm having right away, and ask for His help. And stay in the Word and just stay connected to Him. And but at the same time, it's not I think sometimes we gloss it over, and we think, oh, well, we're Christians. It shouldn't be that way, or there's something wrong with you, or, you know, um, and I think some people are miraculously healed of it and never have it again. But I think some of us have to walk it out. And, I think there's the healing comes in small steps. And maybe part of it is just to bring us closer to the Lord and our walk, in Christ. And for me, it's been that it's been slow steps, and so I just wrote the song Mind of Christ because I wanted other people to know that they weren't alone. If they're struggling with this, if this is just something that they feel like, is still a challenge that they're I just feel like we isolate ourselves in the Christian community when it comes to this, and it's just not talked about in a way that's maybe as helpful as it could be. And so that was what this song was for. And so, I wanted to devote the chapter to it and just be really honest about it. I don't have any perfect, solutions for you, but I know the prayer really helps. I know um, a lot of times it's a combination of counseling and medical treatment and spiritual um, discernment and focus. So I just encourage people to not carry the burden alone,
Mm.
and to just seek the resources that they need. I even put a link to some resources in the book And then I also, you talked about the QR code. So yeah, I wanted it to kind of be a multimedia experience, this book. I really don't know that there's anything else like it exactly in the market. I couldn't find anything. That's kind of why I couldn't find anything I liked, so I created my own kind of blueprint. But the thing I like, about the QR code is what I did is I made a playlist on YouTube of all of the songs. And so it's just a QR code that takes you to that. But I also I did one music video for the album, and it was for Mind of Christ. And so there's a music video, and we depict the actress who's wonderful, Sydney Simons. We had her kind of go through like she's really struggling, and then slowly through the song, Craig, she starts coming into the light. So you have, my blues and yellows and oranges, which is kind of those colors I play with so much in my paintings. Those are the colors we use for the music video. She starts in this kind of dark blue, dark, and then by the end, she's going through this door and looking at this golden light and walking into the light. But it's not automatic. It's not immediate. It's just these small steps toward the light. And that was kind of what the song's all about, is just like slowly hanging on, holding on, and going towards the light. And so I thought, well, maybe, somebody could relate to the music video, who maybe not wouldn't relate as much to the painting or the prose, the narrative, but they might enjoy the music video. So I just tried to put as many types of art in it, so that I could pull in the widest audience possible, just so as many people as possible could be ministered
Mm.
to. So that was kind
That's
of the
great.
thought.
Yeah, I mean, I always use the reference of fishing. It's like fishing. You don't know
Mm,
how you're going to catch someone,
mhm,
but you said something which is it's really fascinating. Like especially in the Christian community, we don't
mhm,
speak openly about
mhm,
depression, anxiety, addiction, right? And like you said, and I think what happens because and we'll say from even the pastors, the priests, I always say, imagine if they got up at the pulpit and they actually or the altar and they actually said, I'm hurting. I'm going through a lot. And I know it. I mean, I know a lot of priests and pastors, and I'm imagining you do too. And they carry such a burden for their
mhm,
congregation, and they don't really have outlets. And imagine if they were able to
mhm.
express what they were going through, their
Wow.
struggles, their fears, their doubts. Because I think what happens for us as a Christian, we expect that because everyone around us, especially in the congregation, can put on this, we'll call it a persona that they're everything is fine, but right beneath the surface, they're struggling. So then when we're struggling, we say, well, maybe there's something wrong with me.
Mhm,
Maybe it's I'm not strong enough in my faith, or maybe I'm not praying enough. Maybe
mhm,
God is upset with me. And then we fall into this deep depression. But
mhm,
imagine if like I asked you in the street and I said, "How you doing today, Kim?" And
mhm.
instead of just right away responding, "I'm fine, everything's great," and you
Yeah.
smile, to actually be honest and say, "I'm hurting, I'm going through a lot, I'm struggling." But then
Mhm,
imagine if the other person actually was cared and listened, right? The way Jesus sat at the well and just listened
mhm,
to that person.
mhm.
Imagine how different life would be instead of
Mm.
just brushing it off or right away saying, "Why is this person telling me more information than I was willing to
I
listen to?"
love that.
Even
Yeah.
asking the person how they're doing.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, some of the things we all struggle with,
Yeah.
and books like this remind us that we need to be willing to ask and to be open and to know that it's okay if we're hurting and to ask for help. And that's why
Yes.
resources are so powerful.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I think just that it's okay to be human. It's okay to be kind of vulnerable with each other, and I think that's where really healing happens and growth happens. But I do think sometimes we put folks up on a pedestal, and then they feel like they can't be vulnerable. I've struggled. I'm like, well, I don't. How much do I say? How much do I not? Well, you know what? I'm not. I just can't be perfect. I can't try to be perfect. I'm just so not, that I just decided I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to talk like myself, and I don't really care. I mean, I don't really care, honestly. Like I'm at midlife. I'm at midlife, Craig. I don't care. You know what I mean? It's
I
very
do. I do.
freeing. It's very freeing. I just am gonna do what I do. And so I think that's been freeing, but hopefully that will make other people feel free to share. And I mean, that's one of the reasons you talk about the discussion. I put like some questions, in each chapter. So for that chapter especially, I hope people will think through the questions, and maybe even in a group. I could see this being a really good like group study
Yeah.
tool. You could say, hey, hey group, let's do a chapter a week or whatever, and then spend some time with the questions and the prayer and everything. And I'm hopeful, maybe this could just start conversation that's authentic and fruitful. Then I mean, gosh, what an answer to prayer.
No, I agree. And I think it's like what we said before we started filming. It's we get so consumed with the success of the secular world, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, we got to sell a lot of books and we got a lot of people have to watch it. And then
Mm-hmm.
we're human, like you said. So we get overwhelmed if only three people watch, and then we're questioning, was this even worth it?
Yeah.
Then we have to go back and say we're not judged by the success of the secular world, right? We're not judged by society standards. We're judged by that one person that opens the
Mm-hmm.
book or listens to the song or sees the painting and you brought them to Christ or they're able to reflect on their life or whatever happens, right? Healing. It's that one person. That's all that God ever spoke about. Jesus always spoke about the one, but we're
Yeah.
always so consumed with the way the world judges success. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's like a trap that we all fall into, but like you said, we're human. But I really this book that's just like once I saw it, I said, I gotta give you a call. But then I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know this, and if you could tell me, so do you work in prison ministry, or tell me about that? Because you were there some prisoners that were involved in the creativity of the book? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so no, so they weren't involved in the actual book creation. That was, I did that. But what I have so I've been in jail ministry for about a year. And so I'd been for years, Craig, trying to get in. But with COVID restrictions and just some other personnel, changes or whatever, it's just been hard to get in. But I got in about a year ago. I go with a church group. But then a few months ago, I said, I'm loving this so much, but I want to do more. I want to do something that's going to build relationships and put people at ease. Because I think the problem sometimes with going in with like prison ministry or whatever, it's like you're kind of beating them over the head with, the Bible and the heaven and hell and and the stuff like that before you build relationship. And these are folks who've been through a lot of trauma. They've been through a lot of pain. And what they would really love is first for somebody to just listen to them
Mm.
and to love them and to just accept them and just help them feel comfortable around you. And so I came up with doing some kind of creative arts class, and our local jail, the leadership's just been phenomenal and so open to my ideas. And so we literally went to the pod, the group of inmates, the women that are in kind of programs and that kind of thing, the ones we have access to working with. And I said, hey, what do you want to do? I was like, we could do songwriting, we could do other kind of writing, we could do art, we can do painting. And they all said painting. And so I said, okay, well, I have this series of sunsets that I painted. Um, why don't we start with those? And so we do a simplified version of each of my 8 Herald paintings. We just finished the last one this past Saturday. And then we're going to have, so I have like 17 women in this class,
Wow.
and I've gotten to know them and just really, talk to them and just try to just be supportive. And then, as ministry, I think that is ministry, honestly, in itself. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
showing kindness. And like you said, I think it's fine. I think it's okay to say to somebody, you know what, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're going through that. I don't have some, you know, clever response, or, I'm not going to throw some verse at you, right away. I just want to tell you I'm really sorry that you're going through this. I'm going to be praying for you if that's okay. And I just think people appreciate it. And
And it's like you said, just listening. Most
yeah.
of my most successful interviews are when I just sit there and I listen. And
Mm,
I remember, I mean, it's happened to me so many times in person. Not Zoom is hard,
mhm,
but where a celebrity, big celebrity, will sit there and say, "Nobody's ever listened to me.
mm,
Nobody cares." I mean, I could tell you numerous times where off
yeah,
camera they would say to me, or even during the interview, where nobody listens to me. And you think about it, like you said, it's just sitting there listening to someone that's in jail. I was only in jail once, in jail, did prison ministry once, I should clarify. And I wanted to go back, and I still do. And it was the most powerful day of my life.
yeah,
And I love
mm,
to tell this quick story, but we were at Sing Sing, and they said, "Does anyone want to get up and speak?" And I just felt this call to Christ, and I was like, "I don't want to get up. I don't want to get up." And I got up, and God's like, "Get up."
wow,
Walked to the front, and it was 300, 400 people, and they were talking about similar to your story, how they were using acting as a way of sort of expressing their emotions.
yeah,
This inmate who was there for probably 30 years, I think he was there for murder. I looked at him and I said, "Tell me about the power of being vulnerable." And I said, and I started going on this whole, I don't even know, God was just using me. And I
yeah,
started talking about, and he spoke about the first night he was in jail. He was crying. and how he was became so vulnerable and passionate, and how being able to express your emotions and feelings and love would
Hmm.
transform this prison, but this just
Yeah.
him. And he talked about how acting and art was a way of him being able to embrace his emotions, and it changed his life. And the recidivism for people that were in this program or programs like yours, the recidivism rate drops dramatically because
Yes.
it sort of gives them this sense of hope. And but like you said, you're listening to them. And I think we can't all go to prison ministry because like you said, it's hard, but next time you see someone at work, right? I mean, we could tell when someone's going through a lot. Instead of going the other way or avoiding them, oh, she's in a mood. What about just asking them, how you doing, right? And just listening to them, and always think about that time when Jesus just sat there and he
Hmm.
listened to the woman, right? He listened to her at the well. He didn't judge her, he just listened. And that's what we need to do, especially during this month, is just listen. So hopefully you'll listen to me and pick up Kim's book because it's an easy read. And like she said, you don't need to go anywhere. You could just use your phone and
Yeah.
scan the QR code. So, Kim, where can people find this book?
Yeah, so it is available on Amazon and it's also available on my website, just kimgentrymeyer.com, and go to my store on my website and it's there too. So I figured, most people like Amazon, but if you don't like Amazon, then you can do it on my website. So yeah, it's ready, it's available, and I just hope it's a blessing. And Craig, thank you for such a generosity of time and spirit, and just really, talking so much about the listening piece, which I think is so huge because a lot of times maybe we don't listen because we don't have an answer, but we don't always have to have an answer for somebody. We can just listen.
That's what my wife says. Just listen. Just sit there and listen. You don't have to always respond. I got to take my own advice. But Kim, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time and good luck with the book, and especially this month to release it on Mental Health Awareness Month. This is very important, and like we said, just listen, but also be willing to share. I mean, that's one of the most important things is to be open and honest and not bury our feelings and build a relationship with Jesus Christ. I think Kim and I can definitely attest to that. That has
Yes,
transformed and changed our lives for sure.
1000%. Yes, Craig. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Guys, hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you.